Welcome to The Roll Forward, a podcast for the next wave of finance leaders, especially those looking to transform their roles by making smarter, faster, and more profitable business decisions using the power of technology and a forward-looking approach to finance. Listen in to learn how to get out of the back office trenches and become a more strategic partner within your organization.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Roll Forward podcast. My name is Joe Michalowski, and this episode is brought to you by Mosaic, a strategic finance platform that transforms the way business gets done. Today, my guest is Todd Spartz, CFO at LinkLive. Todd, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Joe. Glad to be here.
Love it. So super excited to have you here. We have a really exciting topic today, but before we get into it, do you mind just giving everyone the quick background about yourself, the work you're doing at LinkLive, and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an industry veteran. I've been in Silicon Valley for, 30 years now. I'm originally from the Midwest, went to college out there, wound up going to business school out west here in the Bay Area, met my wife, and both of us wound up as in finance, in tech. And we both kind of followed unique paths, and mine's kind of followed the valley. As technology has changed in the valley over the decades, so is my kind of vertical focus. I started out in semiconductor equipment manufacturing, got into networking, then wound up spending a little bit of time in kind of web analytics and advertising, web advertising, and then wound up really where I've spent the vast majority of my career, and certainly all of it as a CFO, which is enterprise SaaS.
Love it. First of all, power couple, good for you guys. Also, I too started out in the semiconductor industry. I was editing technical manuals for a company called Analog Devices. That was my first,
very good. Yeah,
my first job out of college. 700-page manuals about semiconductors. Not a fun start to my career, but I hope it was better for you.
Definitely something I'd need a manual for.
It was a lot. But we're going to talk about much more exciting things today. I was excited when our customer success team, our co-founder, everyone tagged me in a recording you had with someone here, E-Man, talking about AI. And we're trying to talk a lot about AI lately. I think everybody is. And they told me they had a lot of great thoughts about it. So I thought we'd get you on the podcast and just talk about the potential for AI in finance. So as we get going here, do you mind just setting the stage? I would love your kind of like broad thoughts on sort of where we are now and the future potential of AI in finance. Would just love any sort of general ideas here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, technology has certainly changed finance in the 3 decades I've been at it. I'd still, though, characterize us as being in the first inning. I think it all started with digitization, where suddenly your financial systems, your ERP, CRM, HRIS, et cetera, started digitizing data that you could then access within the system. No more, I recall time when I actually had to schlep in the rain from one building to another building to get to the filing cabinets where the invoices were, if you can believe that. Yeah, we've come a long way. Obviously, those are all now stored in whatever platform you're using. And then we've kind of migrated into automation, where a lot of the things that we used to have to spend time doing are now provided for you. That can be everything from downloads of data into an Excel file. So no longer do you have to literally type what you need. Also, a lot of business processes are automated. Approval workflows, for example, purchase requisitions, et cetera. You don't necessarily have to access bank statements in a paper form anymore, right? Those are automated. And to a certain extent, reconciliations of cash now occur within the system. So those things, have been available for a while now. Where we're kind of at is at this precipice of AI, where people are beginning to use it in their everyday lives. But I don't think for the average CFO or his or her finance team that they're embracing that a tremendous amount today. I think pretty much every CFO out there, certainly the ones in technology, are starting to kick the tires on things and trying to identify opportunities. I know that our investor, Invictus, they built an AI platform. They have a head of AI, and that is now being used internally to help us generate qualified leads. So our BDRs take the leads that the AI says are the ones that are probably most appropriate for our solution. Within finance now, we're beginning to look at some of the tools. We're looking at the Amazon tool right now to help us forecast so that we can try and understand with all these opportunities that are in our CRM, certainly we have the Salesforce view, we have the finance view, maybe marketing and others in leadership have a view, but we also want an AI view. And, maybe we can start allowing AI to kind of sniff into our networks and see if a rep has committed a deal, how much traffic is happening on that deal. Are keywords like budget achieved or attained, lawyer engaged, the key buy signals that those are happening. And then, to be able to go back and look at that rep and say, hey, how has he or she performed on their forecast over history? Given this set of circumstances, how does that apply to the current deal? And what does the AI see as the opportunity? So, I think some of those things we're starting to look at, but certainly nowhere near where I expect to go. I think in a relatively short period of time, and I have no crystal ball. I wish I did.
No one
But
does.
I think we're talking on the order of 5 to 10 years. You're going to be seeing, and I think we're going to probably get into some specific questions on that, a great deal more.
I love that. And I love the examples you gave too, because where I wanted to go next was like where I think anyone listening is probably not a huge surprise to know, like we're, like you said, first inning, like we're not deep in this at all. So I was curious, like what the current ways, like for me, every marketing tool, like I run content here. So every marketing tool under the sun is promising me some kind of AI powered something. So I just keep trying new tools. And like, for me, none of them have really made it into my like day-to-day workflow. So I was curious if there's anything that has, like, if you're using ChatGPT for anything or any of like the more established tools, have you found anything that's been useful right now today from the AI stack sort of
Yeah,
standpoint?
well, definitely generative AI, ChatGPT, and its cousins Bard. I certainly do use it. If I'm going to have to write policy, I'll often have it propose a policy. I'll give it the parameters of our situation and then see, because often, it's not going to provide me with the answer, but it will often provide a potential answer that has elements of things that I hadn't thought about. And just most recently, as part of our audit, we had to write a white paper on how we were going to account for something. And I wrote it up and I'm like, gosh, I just feel like that's not quite right. And I asked ChatGPT, and after it basically said, this is not something you should rely on, it did provide a nugget of information on something that I hadn't thought about. And then I was able to go to the literature myself, find that section and paragraph and quote it chapter and verse and give it attribution. And so far so good with that audit question. So there is some of that. We're looking at tools right now. I wouldn't say we're using any right now. We're looking at some CLM tools that have AI, so they will propose contract language, right? They'll have our standard boilerplate agreement loaded. It'll ask you, is this third-party paper? Is it your paper? And then as you're negotiating certain red lines, it'll propose language that you should consider using and ultimately try and reduce the amount of time that you're spent negotiating and, trying to use those expensive lawyers as efficiently as possible. Let's put it that way. So, we're looking at some other, what we really like is to get a set of tools that will help us do some algorithms, right? So we'd like to not have to sit down and build a multivariate linear regression model that pretty much, if you're me, the last time you did that was in business school. And, it just isn't something that, I've used, but I could absolutely would like, a probability or Monte Carlo, help some of these really difficult things, make them simpler, or stock-based compensation, Black-Scholes model, help make these input variables simpler so I can push those decisions and some of those, certainly the data collection further down into the organization, which also gives those folks more opportunity to do some really, meaty things. So I think the promises still haven't been realized. I also, and this is one of the things that I mentioned to Eman that I would love, and I think there's a question maybe further down about this, I would love to have an AI go through my dashboard, right? And there's kind of like a public dashboard that I have and then an internal dashboard, right? My internal dashboard might be 100 metrics, way too many to really manage a company by. Really, I think you can only remember 7 things. So, I try and keep my public dashboards and that what I focus the executive team on to a fairly limited set, but I would love to have it look at a broader set and look at our budget or our forecast, and then look at what things are looking like based on results so far and recent performance, actual performance, and alert me to things that I might miss or just haven't had a chance to, because typically, right, a lot of us CFOs will wait till the board meeting. We get all this data from our teams. We're pouring through all of it, trying to craft a story that we can deliver to the board that will give them a sense that, yeah, here's where we're at. This is where we wanted to be. Here's where we're going to course correct. And here's where we're going to add rocket fuel to things that are going well. It would be nice to be able to, because I'm sure like any other CFO, we're all wearing multiple hats. We're all incredibly busy. It would be great to have that assistant, right, that can comb through the data and potentially serve up some things for you to look at, right? Because it wouldn't be that hard. Like you could create, a flow chart of, these are the 1,000 things tech company CFOs look at and in this order. And it could follow through that in a second or less and serve up something that's probably better than a lot of staff members, right? Because they're obviously also working under deadlines. The AI never sleeps, as they say.
AI never sleeps should be the tagline for this one. I love all this. This is great. I mean, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, where it's just like, obviously first inning again, it's like none of this is going to be entirely like, hey, go use AI to do this today. So I love that we're kind of like throwing out ideas, and it just seems like you're a wealth of knowledge on like ways that you want this to go. And we're going to get into some more like workflow specific ideas. But before we get there, I want to talk about what you think are some of the challenges to making AI a bigger piece of the finance workflow. Like, this is not a function, or the things you work on are not like, I don't know, I have like Grammarly, and it's like checking my grammar like for like articles I write. Like that's a like simple workflow with like very strict rules and like low leverage. Like there's not a lot of like risk in this process. There's a lot of leverage, a lot of risk in what you do every day as a CFO. So I'm curious, like, are there just roadblocks you see AI companies or companies like Mosaic kind of running into as they try to roll this out so it's useful to somebody like you?
Yeah, I think we're so early on that the users of some of this technology haven't really experienced a great deal of it. But I do think, what you're, I think, likely to run into, and I was reading something, I think it was by Mark Andreessen, who has young children, and he was saying something to the effect of, my children are growing up in the age of AI. They're going to begin, I think his kids might be in elementary school. So by the time they get to middle school and high school, and certainly by the time they get to college, they're going to have spent years and years working with AI. And I think, and internally, again, Invictus, they've kind of pointed out to us kind of the history of it and how we've kind of wound up where we're at. And I think one of the roadblocks internally is just fear of it and lack of understanding how to engage with it. Because like any relationship, you need to work at it, right? It's not the AI, at least the early development of it. It's going to be kind of cookie cutter. It's one size fits all. It's not going to be tailored to me, Todd Spartz, or you, Joe Michalowski, right? It's going to be something that we're going to have to learn how to handle, and learn how to quickly identify what's accurate, what's not. How to curate things that work and avoid or ignore things that don't work. Like, I think there's a lot of that. And, I think for those folks that are particularly earlier in their careers, I think they just really need to embrace it. Like, you need to continually exercise that muscle, because you're going to be light years ahead of your counterparts that don't. I think somebody said something, I'll get this quote wrong, what makes a great AI lawyer or something. There are those lawyers that are good, and there's those lawyers that are good with AI, meaning you can still do your job, but you can probably do your job better if you know how to use it. And so I think the biggest roadblocks internally within finance organizations are just learning how to use it. And then I think we're just kind of waiting patiently for the waves of greatness to wash across us.
I love that, and I think it's true probably of any organization. It's true, at least in my circles as well. It's just like, every I'm a writer by trade. That's how I ended up, running content. I do more than write, but for people who are like freelance writers, they're like, well, like is AI going to replace me tomorrow? And there's no sign that people will be completely eliminated, not for quite a while. But I think it's a really great point. One that I wanted to ask you about specifically, and it's just like data management. Like from the outside looking in, like there's a lot of private data that you're working with as the CFO. Like, is this something that we just assume like teams like we're SOC 2 compliant? So like I assume like any company that is compliant with these kinds of things like will handle that with AI as well. But as a CFO, are you concerned about data privacy or data compliance from the AI perspective at all?
I definitely am. We all need to be aware, and I wish I would have had this next seminar. I think Invictus is holding. It's specifically on privacy and AI.
Oh, nice.
Because what you share with AI is public, right? There's no privacy promised or delivered, and so you're absolutely right. When you start opening up some of your most proprietary data, certainly customer lists have to be way up there. Maybe even customer prospects, even more so. Like I can't think without except for maybe your IP on your product, your prospect list may be among the most personal, sensitive data in a company. And to just turn that over to a bot that really promises nothing is something to be concerned about. I wish I did have the answers, but I am, and encourage everybody. I mentioned that seminar I'm going to be attending, but I would definitely, because I think, we've already seen where there's some lawsuits now in the AI community where these owners of content are suing, saying, "Hey, you've accessed personal data that wasn't intended to be for your use to help you, particularly in the generative AI, build your large language models." And so, who knows how that's going to shake out? Is it just a roadblock, or is this a full-on wall that's going to be difficult to scale? I think it remains to be seen, but I do think it will be a while before we have definitive rules. The AI CPA has guidelines, and so I would encourage us all to just be cautious and be aware of it, and obviously try to mitigate to the extent you can any loss of IP.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point. I'm glad we talked about it a little bit, because I think to me, this feels like maybe one of the first times that people are being forced into early adoption. Like it's that sort of prevalent, like AI is sort of that powerful or prevalent in every industry, that even people that might have kind of like lagged behind tech in the past, like everyone sort of has to get ahead of it. And so we're all kind of just like feeling our way around together. And so I like what you said about, being cautious, just kind of knowing what you're going into, and just trying to be smart, because no one has the exact answers. But as long as you're kind of mindful of it, you're going to be in a better spot than if you were just blindly trusting every AI tool that came by.
Yeah, I think too, certainly adoption curves have accelerated as we've gone through time, and that likely won't change. And I think, AI, will be realized more quickly maybe than some think. But I do think the market may be getting a little bit ahead of itself. Certainly, autonomous vehicles, I don't know how many years now Elon's promised us that the cars are going to drive themselves. It's got to be at least 5 years now. And, I think back to when I very first, I'm that old, very first saw a browser, it was Netscape, Mark Andreessen's Netscape. And I'll tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of great content on the web at that time. There really wasn't. And it took, this was probably 1992, 93, maybe, 93, I think.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward, 30 years. It's taken us that long to kind of get where we are today. So it didn't happen overnight. I never would have dreamt some of the things that we can do today on our smartphones.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true of AI, but this isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be, a process. It may not take 30 years like the web did. But, because I think, are we saying we're in Web 3.0 now, or is it still 2.0?
I lose track. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows which data we're in? It could be 4. Who knows? It's
Yeah.
beyond me.
So, things take longer. So I don't think, we need to rush out and make rash decisions. I always say it's better to be right than quick. But by the same token, it will come. So,
Totally.
Get ready.
I love this. This is a great discussion. I want to get even deeper. You've mentioned a lot of great potential use cases, things you're thinking about, but I want to kind of bucket it into what I think are sort of the 3. I mean, this is very much a simplification, but like kind of 3 buckets of kind of what finance and accounting are responsible for. And my thought is 2 of them are just like the analysis side and the planning side. But first, before we get there, I want to hear what you think could realistically be like fully automated by AI. And so I'm thinking like some of those transactional workflows, accounting, compliance, things like that. Like, what is that baseline that you would set where you're like, I hope that AI completely automates this piece so that I can go and, we'll get to the analysis and planning side in a minute and sort of talk some about the strategic use cases.
Yeah. So transaction processing is definitely one. I expect that to be achieved fairly soon. There's already, when you look at some of the vendors out there like Tipalti, AP is largely automated and they're leveraging AI. They still have some humans involved, but that's basically a situation where you're outsourcing AP, even though it's internal to you, right? The AI is booking the payables in your ERP for you on your behalf with some review and controls. And certainly receivables and collections, that can all be automated, reconciliations, basic consolidations of subsidiaries and books. That can all be automated and probably will be, I'd be surprised if there isn't the ability to do that certainly in a simpler enterprise in the next 5 years. When you get into things like compliance and controls, that's another thing that finance is responsible for, building a system of controls, and then testing and alerting to areas where you're not meeting those controls and you need to course correct. Like those are things that AI can absolutely do. And again, I'd be surprised if that largely isn't in place for, again, smaller, simpler, more agile organizations in the next 5 years. So, some of these, going over some of those SOX controls, trying to figure out, what the best ones are, and then, testing them and fixing them, that takes a lot of time. And that's absolutely something that an AI is built to do. I absolutely think that's the case. And then, yeah, so if you've got kind of the back office that's focused on transaction processing and recording and ensuring that things are in a controlled environment and that you're compliant with all the rules and regulations of the industries that you're competing in, then you got the front office, right? That's really dealing with forecasts and budgets, right? So trying to figure out, we've got finite resources, we've got opportunities to invest those resources. Where should we do it? And then, making those commitments. And then, I think most of that will still be, at least in the near term, people doing that, right? Strategic finance, making the investment decisions, but then the budget versus actual, highlighting the deltas, proposing solutions as to where those deltas are coming from. Your headcount's 5 over plan. We've looked at the open recs. There's, people were hired without a rec. It's absolutely something that AI could do. And then, like we touched on it a little bit earlier, algorithms that help you forecast volume and price. When we negotiate with other competitors in the banking space, other money center banks, what kind of discounts do we typically give? How long does that deal typically take to close? Based on the email traffic with their purchasing department, how likely is that deal to close? All that stuff, I think, it could help assist in. And so, helping build some of the budgets or proposing, so a budget planner, somebody in the marketing or sales or operations organization, R&D, whatever, can, be presented with, here's the trend. This is where you've been. This is where we predict you're going based on other things that we're seeing. Is there a reason that this isn't right? Oh, yes, that's absolutely incorrect. Because little did it know that we're going to make this huge investment in this great new thing, right? So again, that's where, people leveraging these assets will really, I think, be a true, will really add the most value. So yeah, that's, I think the budgeting, forecasting, and planning, there's the strategic element and there's the more tactical and analytical. And I think the last two, it can probably, that may be closer to 10 years down the road, but I fully think it'll get there. But I don't see it, in the 10-year horizon, making investment decisions, right? We should buy this company to get us into this industry, right? We should, stop investing in our product and spend it all on customer support. Let's just keep the customers we have and make them super happy and not get any new ones. I just, that's not something an AI would do, I don't think, and probably not too many finance individuals either. But that highlights where you could make a decision that maybe is right for you, but isn't right for a lot of other places.
Totally. I love all that. Love the breakdown there. There's two specifics that I wanted to ask you about. And the first, on the analysis side, and sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I saw it in the call with Eman. You mentioned predictive churn as like a potential example. Like I remember I listened to the little clip.
Yeah.
You were like excited about this potential use case. And so I would love to hear sort of your thoughts about what that would be, because to me, it was just an interesting idea.
Yeah. So, when we're building forecasts, we're particularly for CFOs in SaaS finance, right? So we're selling subscriptions to customers. It's incredibly more difficult to get a new customer than to keep the one you have. But keeping the ones you have is also difficult, right? There's other competitors out in the marketplace. There's always pricing pressures. People move and they want to work with tools that they're familiar with, right? So how do you, in the face of all that, how do you know what your churn is likely to be? And, I've spent time with customer success organizations that, are on the phone with the customer every day. And that's just one view, right? That customer could love you. You could absolutely be delivering everything they ever wanted and more. But if there's a mandate that they're unaware of from their CFO to go with a competitive product because they're getting a new investor that has a portfolio company that uses that product, like that person can be blindsided. So there's obviously multiple decision criteria that go into a decision every year or 3 years, whenever your renewal's up 5 years, to do we stay or do we go? And, I think it's not one or two variables, right? It's a lot of variables. And, to be able to go into your application as one example and see how often is that customer using your product? How much adoption is there for your product? And if you're seeing more and more users over time, and if those users are daily active users and their daily active usage is increasing, that's a really good indicator. And that one would probably be one of, my higher, more heavily weighted attributes, right? Absolutely. But there's other attributes in there, right? That getting data from the users on, some kind of analytic on how happy they are. Would they recommend you or not, right? Those are often really, really good indicators. Payment history, if you're always struggling to get them to pay for your product, they're probably not too afraid of losing it, right? I know for a lot of customers that use a certain CRM vendor, they don't want to be behind because they will get shut off. And that's where your pipeline is. And you can't have that happen, right? So, there's probably 10 factors, and it would be, how much investment have we made? How many new features, functionality how do we fit competitively? Where you get those little pie charts and you look at all the competitors, like how has that changed over time? If we're seeing more and more competition catch up to us, disrupt us, then, maybe that's a concern. And certainly if we're priced more, I think we should be very concerned. So anyway, yeah, I think that's an algorithm that, AI is built for far more than I am. Let's put it that way.
No, this is awesome. Like I said, the ideas, it's great to hear you talk about like where you think this technology could go. Again, we're not there yet, but these are all like realistic things that we can expect to see in the coming years. And so the other one that I wanted to talk about, and mostly just because as we're recording this, it's August 3rd, and like planning season is, if it's not already upon you as you listen to this, it's about to be. So I'm curious, like, how you think AI could change like the annual planning process in the future, because we're doing some content about it, and we're talking about the pretty structured timeline process, the traditional approach. But planning is just getting faster and faster. So I'm curious what you think AI could do to that kind of traditional structure.
That's a great question, and I'm thinking. First I've heard it, and look, I think I'm a big believer, and again, I've been CFO of more entrepreneurial companies, not multi-billion-dollar public corporations. But what I've found is I always try and hitch my wagon to a horse that's a best of breed, that really is a leader, because what they do is hopefully, if not force, strongly encourage you to adopt best practice, right? And I think for a lot of us, at least when I went to school, you didn't study what the optimum planning calendar is, right? I just kind of got out into the world, and, my boss said, hey, you got to develop a budget for this. And I kind of sat down and came up with a list and put some dates on it, started with the day it was due and worked backwards. I would think in time, a company like Mosaic could absolutely, as part of their planning and budgeting application, have boilerplate planning calendars, right? Mm. So that you're literally following step by step what you should be doing in order to get your plan completed as quickly as possible. And because you can multi-thread, right? You can have parallel tracks. It becomes difficult. I think for me, I tend to not be someone that's great at multitasking. I'm not one to be watching television while working on a spreadsheet and talking to my parents. Like, that's not something that I do. So I would do those things in sequential order, which takes much longer. Hopefully I'm doing it better, but AI could absolutely parallel those things, right? And it could make sure that things are following, the critical path, right? Gantt charting, that's, again, I know they exist. I don't Gantt chart my planning or my closed calendars, but why couldn't there be a tool in a planning system that says, hey, have you done this or this? Why not? You should, right? And I think, and serving up all the right analytics, right? Like, if I need to meet with R&D to go over their budget, it would be great if it can grab all the right data so that I show up to that meeting ready, right? And I'm not, trying to carve out an hour or two before that meeting so that I can assimilate the data and distill it in kind of a, understandable format. So I think there's a lot that can be done there around process flow, like, sending emails out. Hey, department manager, you've only got 3 days to get your budget in,
Yeah.
and we've looked at your calendar, and we've looked at your financial analyst calendar, and you both are free tomorrow at 2:00. Like, why not? Right.
Totally.
So really simple administrative things like that are so easy. And I'll be honest, I don't hear a lot about those things. I'm sure we will in time, but I think, you start doing some work there, and you start, highlighting, oh, you have a major variance on this that you probably, at a metric you probably don't want to look at or don't look at, but it's very predictive, right? So you should take a look at this. Like, those types of things I think will be super helpful. I wish I had them 10 years ago.
I love this. And you can be sure I'm going to grab this clip. I'm going to send it over to the product team, and they can get to work on building the Todd Spartz specific AI tool. Because I feel the same way. I feel like when I read about what's coming, like what's on the horizon, it feels very high level to me. Like there's a lot of big ideas about just like generally like how it will transform everything. But what I really love is that you're giving me a ton of just incredibly specific use cases, albeit like potential like things we would like to see. But it's really refreshing to hear that as opposed to just like kind of the normal discussion you hear about how AI is going to transform everything. So I appreciate it. However, I would like to transition to something that is important to me that I also don't hear people talk about. And I want to know what you think AI will not touch. Like what are the things that we don't think AI will transform? And so to put it another way, like by automating, by bringing all these use cases to light, what is that doing for you as the CFO? How is it elevating your strategic role so you can take on the human tasks that won't be sort of automated or efficiencyed away, I guess?
Yeah, if we assume that the AI that we're talking about is not sentient, right? It's not thinking. Then what it's doing is it's taking huge data sets and distilling actionable processes, right? It's taking all this information and highlighting these are the things you should look at, or these are the steps you should take. Like diagnosing a patient, based on your blood results and your symptoms, we think you have this, right? But it can't think. And so I think we need to be aware of communication, leadership, mentorship,
Yep.
training. Even in this remote world where a lot of us are not face to face with our coworkers, there are things that we're not picking up, some nonverbal cues, right? And I know I've attended offsite meetings where I've had some aha moments, some true light bulb events where I had never ever thought about it. And whether it was something somebody said or did, or an event that we were at, or I made a connection with somebody that I had never met before, and he or she caused me to think about something in a different way. Those aha moments, or those light bulb moments, those are not AI. And those are going to be incredibly important. And so I think we need to be very intentional as leaders of companies to making sure that as we adopt these tools and as they give us more time to be strategic, that we capitalize on it, right? And that we're creating opportunities that enhance or increase the frequency with which these aha moments happen. Like, I know there's a lot of, I'm sure, boardrooms of property management companies sitting around. How can we make offices really relevant? Like how can they be constructed, organized, used in a way that will foster behaviors that are better than meetings over Zoom, right? Like, and so I think every organization, there are going to be things that AI cannot do, and we need to make sure that we optimize for those opportunities.
I love it. I appreciate you indulging the question because I think it's as Mosaic as I, work on content for this topic. It's really important to me that it never feels like, we're replacing people. And I think that's like a line you have to balance because as you keep saying, oh, we'll do all this automation, we're going to transform everything. It's like you mentioned before, the fear of it. It's like, okay, well, if you automate all that, like, what am I doing? And so I appreciate you kind of sharing that because I think everybody knows it in the back of their head, but to me, it's really important to just keep bringing it up because I think, we're 40 plus minutes of talking about all the amazing things AI is going to do. We should give a nod to the people now and then. So yeah, like I said, very much appreciated. I want to be mindful of time. I have two last questions and we can make them quicker. We can take as long as you want, honestly, but selfishly as Mosaic, like, we have features coming out, we have features that are in pipeline, but I'm sending all this to all the product people at the company so that they can start getting more ideas about what we can do. But I would love to know as we wrap up what you would love to see from a vendor in this space as like the top three priorities. So of all the things we've talked about, what are you hoping are like the big meaty things that AI tackles sooner rather than later for finance?
Yeah, I think what we've enjoyed immensely about Mosaic is not only is it a great platform that allows you to aggregate all your data sources and use pre-built charts, graphs, and metrics to get real results more quickly. That's been fantastic. And probably your secret sauce is your team, just tremendous people that I've worked with there that have been very dedicated, helpful. We've had some challenges. We've done some things in our past that made things more difficult for us today. And, we've had to do some workarounds, and your team has really, measured up in every situation and has delivered. And so I definitely appreciate that. But I'm never satisfied. And so, again, it would be great to have kind of a checklist. Once you've built all these dashboards and you've got budgets, plans, and forecasts, it would be great for this application to then start working through a knowledge base of these are the things that you should, kind of CFO 101, right?
Totally.
And maybe that's, hey, we're going to interview, 100 CFOs and get their opinions on various things, right? I think that could be super, super helpful for a lot of us. And, I think, some of the other things that we talked about, like having, kind of pre-built calendars, having some knowledge bases built around what to do. Like, hey, I've noticed this. It's clear, like, this is a problem. What should I do next? Or how do I solve this? Like, there could absolutely, and maybe the 5 suggestions don't apply to you, but maybe one of them does, and you didn't think about it. Because I'm a huge believer in multiple people are better than one, right? Like, I don't know the answer to everything. That's why I surround myself with talent, right? Nobody's good at everything. And we tend to do the things that we're good at.
Yep.
And we tend to not exercise the things we're bad at so much, which means we aren't getting any better at those bad things. And so, to have a crutch there that can help you, because 1-800, analyst on call doesn't always work, right? And so the more that you can kind of get some of that, or in a really small organization, a startup organization, they don't have the budget for that. It might be the CFO's all they got, or their VP of finance, or whatever that person's called. So trying to build some assistance and some knowledge bases, I think would be super helpful.
I love it. I think you'll be excited about what's coming in the next, as we talk, 45 plus days, but actually less than that. That was the timeline I got a while ago. So stay tuned, because I think you'll be excited about what the product team's rolling out soon. But I want to get to my last question. It has nothing to do with that, or I guess it could have something to do with AI if you would like it to. But I ask everybody that comes on, if you ever listen, and for anyone listening, probably sick of me presenting it that way. But I would love to know, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you started your finance career? I know said you were a veteran. I would love to know the big lesson learned there.
That's a great question. I mean, I think my finance education and my early career in larger finance organizations prepared me well. And I don't think there were too many surprises about what I was doing, right? Whether it was closing the books or building plans, budgets, and forecasts. But I think the one thing that early in my career I didn't do anything on, that I've now come to realize is super important, is building networks and communicating with others, like identifying with the subject matter experts, belonging to a group, like making those investments, whether it's, some LinkedIn group, or it's some trade show that you go to, or a panel that you sit on, or a panel that you watch, right? And then go up to the speaker afterwards and introduce yourself. Like, nobody, I kind of went into finance, I'll be honest, because I was kind of a shy freshman in college, and I'm not going to be an engineer. That's just too much math. But hey, finance, debits, credits, addition, subtraction, a little bit of algebra, I can manage that. So it never dawned on me that at some point I would need to be making presentations and making introductions and solving problems that I didn't have answers for, and would need a group to go out and lean upon, right? Yep. For help. So, and those networks are hugely beneficial when it comes time to recruit. Recruiters are fantastic, but the folks that I've sourced through my own network are almost always better. I can't say enough about taking the time to physically, if you can, go out and meet some other people in your industry and in finance. You won't regret it.
I love that. I think it's a great answer. I love this question. And I always say this. It's like, you never get someone telling me, I've never had someone be like, oh, I wish I was better with my Excel shortcuts in my younger years. It's almost always like something to the effect of working with people better, networking, to your point, always like, maybe it's a specific function that they wanted to understand more. And I really love hearing about that because, I mentioned wanting to talk about like what the people role is still in finance, even with AI. And I think that's it. Like without it, like AI is not replacing any of that for sure. So yeah, really love the answer. Appreciate it. That was the last question I had, Todd. I just realized I got to
Wonderful.
the end and I was like,
Joe,
okay.
thank you. It was a privilege to spend 45 minutes with you.
No, this was great. I want to turn the floor over to you. Where can people go to connect with you, to learn more about LinkLive? Anything you would like to promote to the finance audience? The floor is yours, Todd.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm always willing and able to take questions or connect with others that have interests that are aligned with whether it's AI, finance, or LinkLive, which is obviously using AI in its solutions as well. So yeah, you can reach me. My email is tspartz@linklive.ai.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Todd. I hope we can do it again sometime. This is really fun.
Sounds great, Joe. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for checking out this episode of The Roll Forward. This show is powered by Mosaic, a strategic finance platform that transforms the way business gets done. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow The Roll Forward wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or visit mosaic.tech/podcast to get immediate access to all of the latest episodes.